Toilets are designed to hide the least dignified moments of human life, but throughout history, some of the most powerful people on Earth died exactly where nobody expected them to be found. Some were kings. Some were generals. One was a pope. Another may have been killed by an angry crowd while trying to escape through a latrine. The stories are strange, but the records are real enough to leave historians arguing over the details centuries later. In several cases, the toilet was not the true cause of death. It was simply the final location where power, illness, panic, and bad timing collided. And sometimes, history ends in the bathroom, Constantinople, around 336 CE. Arius was one of the most controversial religious figures in the Roman Empire, and according to one ancient account, he died while using a public latrine. Arius was a Christian priest from Alexandria whose teachings created one of the greatest theological disputes of late antiquity. He argued that Jesus Christ was not eternal in the same way as God the Father. To Arius, Christ was the highest creation of God but still a created being. The disagreement became so explosive that Emperor Constantine called the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE. Hundreds of bishops gathered to settle the issue. The council condemned Arius's teaching and exiled him, but Arius eventually returned to imperial favor. In 336 CE, he was scheduled to appear in Constantinople and be formally restored to the church. The night before that ceremony, Arius walked through the city with supporters. Then he suddenly felt ill. According to the historian Socrates Scholasticus, Arius went to a public toilet near the imperial palace. There, he suffered a violent collapse and died. The account describes blood, severe intestinal discharge, and the sudden emptying of his bowels. Later supporters of Arius claimed he had been poisoned. His opponents claimed divine judgment had found him. No medical examination was possible. No body survives for modern testing. What remains is a death report written by people who already believed Arius was dangerous. His theology divided an empire. His final throne was a latrine. England, 1760. King George II did not die in battle, in Parliament, or beneath a royal crown. He died alone after entering his private toilet at Kensington Palace. George II had ruled Great Britain for more than 3 decades. He had commanded armies, fought political rivals, and survived several threats against the throne. At 76, he still maintained a strict daily routine. On the morning of October 25, 1760, the king rose early and drank hot chocolate. He then walked toward his private water closet. A short time later, servants heard a loud crash. They entered and found the king lying on the floor. He had suffered a sudden dissection of the aorta, the main artery carrying blood from the heart. The artery had split internally. Death came almost immediately. The crash was caused by the king falling against the toilet seat or nearby furniture. His attendants carried him back to bed, but there was nothing they could do. George II had spent his life surrounded by ceremony. Even his meals were carefully managed. Yet the final event of his reign happened in a cramped private room, with servants trying to lift his body from the floor. The royal physicians recorded the medical cause. The public remembered the location. A king can control a kingdom. He cannot control an artery. England, 1016. King Edmund Ironside was already fighting for his crown when a hidden attacker reportedly turned a toilet into a weapon. Edmund ruled during one of England's most dangerous successions. The Danish king Knut had invaded the country and claimed the throne. Edmund fought him through several battles, but neither side could secure a final victory. The two kings eventually agreed to divide England. Edmund would control the south. Knut would rule the north. The arrangement lasted only a few weeks. In some medieval accounts, Edmund visited a latrine at Oxford or at another royal location. While he was seated, an assassin hiding below the wooden seat drove a sharpened weapon upward. The weapon supposedly entered the king's body and killed him. Other sources give a completely different story. They say Edmund died in battle, or that he was murdered elsewhere by a man named Edric Striona. The latrine version may have been exaggerated by later chroniclers who wanted a memorable ending for a troubled king. But the story survived because it fit the politics of the time. Edmund was powerful in public. In private, he was vulnerable to anyone who could reach the space beneath him. The throne was divided by treaty. The body was divided by rumor. Jerusalem, 66 CE. During the Jewish revolt against Rome, a Roman official reportedly tried to flee a palace through a latrine tunnel and was captured before he could disappear. The First Jewish-Roman War began after years of political tension, religious conflict, taxation, and military abuse. When rebellion spread through Jerusalem, Roman officials suddenly found themselves surrounded by enemies. A governor named Gessius Florus became a symbol of Roman corruption. Ancient sources accuse him of extortion and deliberate provocation. As the revolt intensified, Roman soldiers and administrators searched for ways to escape the city. A later tradition claims that one Roman official attempted to hide inside a sewer or latrine passage. He believed the underground channel would carry him away from the angry crowd. Instead, people discovered the escape route was narrow. He could not move quickly, and the smell made concealment nearly impossible. The crowd dragged him out and killed him. The account may combine several events, and the identity of the victim is not certain. But Roman cities depended on underground systems that connected homes, streets, baths, and public toilets. The same infrastructure that removed waste could also become an escape route. When it failed, the sewer became a trap. Rome built roads across the world. Its enemies learned to search beneath the floor. China, 1644. The last emperor of the Ming dynasty did not die in a palace surrounded by loyal guards. He died after the collapse of his capital. With the empire already slipping beneath him, the Chongzhen emperor inherited a dynasty weakened by famine, corruption, military rebellion, and financial crisis. By 1644, rebel forces led by Li Zicheng had entered Beijing. The emperor's armies were unable to defend the city. Inside the palace, the government dissolved within hours. The emperor attempted to gather officials and organize resistance, but many had already fled. According to historical accounts, he escaped toward Coal Hill, later called Jingshan. There, he hanged himself from a tree. Some later retellings add that he first stopped at a toilet or latrine while trying to escape through the palace grounds. That detail is difficult to verify. The stronger evidence places his death outside the palace, not inside a bathroom. But the story survives because it captures the complete collapse of imperial dignity. For centuries, Ming emperors controlled ceremonies, punishments, taxes, and armies. In the final hours, the emperor was reduced to a frightened man searching for a way out. The dynasty did not end with a grand final speech. It ended with an emperor alone on a hill. History rarely gives dying rulers the room they expect. Medieval Europe. A surprising number of aristocrats died not while fighting, but after falling through floors weakened by poorly built toilets and waste pits. Castle toilets were often called garderobes. They were simple chambers built into walls, with a narrow opening leading outside. Waste dropped into a pit, onto a slope, or directly into a moat. The design was efficient, but it was not safe. Wooden platforms rotted, stone edges cracked. A person stepping into the wrong place could fall several meters into a cesspit. The victim might drown in waste, become trapped beneath debris, or die from infection before rescuers reached them. Several medieval chronicles describe nobles, soldiers, and servants falling into latrines. The details are often incomplete because chroniclers preferred battles and royal marriages. A toilet accident was considered shameful. That is why many names disappeared from the record. The architecture itself tells the story. Some castle garderobes were positioned above deep channels, with no guardrail, no locking mechanism, and no warning. A dark opening in a stone wall was expected to remain quiet. If someone vanished, servants were sent to investigate. The fortress protected its owners from armies. It could not protect them from gravity. Rome, 1294. Pope Celestine V resigned the papacy, entered captivity, and according to one tradition, died after being struck by a nail driven into the wall of his prison cell. Celestine V had been elected pope after a long period without agreement among powerful cardinals. He was a hermit, not a politician. After only a few months, he resigned. The decision shocked Europe. His successor, Boniface VIII, feared that Celestine could become a rival symbol for dissatisfied supporters. Celestine was imprisoned in a small fortress. One story claims that he was killed when a nail was driven through the back of his head while he slept. Another tradition places the murder near a latrine or a small private chamber. The evidence is uncertain. Modern examinations of his skull found an opening consistent with a severe injury, but they cannot prove exactly how it happened. The location may have been altered by later storytelling. Still, the image endured. A former pope hidden from the world, dying beside the most private room in the fortress. Celestine had escaped the burden of the papacy. He did not escape the people who wanted him silent. Even holiness required security. Japan, 1582. Oda Nobunaga was one of the most powerful warlords in Japanese history, but his death began with betrayal inside his military network. Nobunaga was close to unifying Japan through military conquest and administrative reform. He had destroyed rival clans and reduced the power of several religious armies. In June 1582, he stayed at Hanno-ji Temple in Kyoto with only a small guard. One of his generals, Akechi Mitsuhide, suddenly turned against him. Akechi's troops surrounded the temple before dawn. Nobunaga realized that escape was impossible. He set fire to the building and died inside. His son Nobutada was attacked at a nearby temple and also killed. Some later accounts say that Nobunaga had been warned of suspicious movements by servants near the toilet and outer corridors. Those details are difficult to separate from legend. But the physical layout of elite residences made private rooms important during an attack. Toilets, storage passages, and service corridors were often less guarded than main entrances. An enemy did not need to control the throne room. He needed only one unprotected route. Nobunaga's reforms changed Japan. His final defense lasted less than an hour. The warlord who watched every battlefield missed the danger inside his own camp. France, during the late Middle Ages. A nobleman fleeing political enemies reportedly fell into a castle Privy and drowned before anyone could pull him out. Medieval France was filled with rival factions, disputed inheritances, and sudden arrests. Noble families often moved between castles, monasteries, and fortified estates to avoid capture. A privy could be placed near the outer wall, allowing waste to fall beyond the fortress. It also created a dangerous gap in the structure. The story of one French aristocrat describes him attempting to cross a narrow passage at night. The wooden cover gave way. He fell into the shaft and became trapped below. His companions heard him shouting, but the opening was too narrow for a quick rescue. By the time they lowered ropes, he had stopped responding. The source does not provide enough information to confirm the man's identity or exact date. That uncertainty is common in toilet death stories. The records were usually written by enemies, monks, or officials who considered the event embarrassing. The death was not heroic. It did not justify a statue. The castle remained standing. The privy became the only witness. The modern toilet created a different danger. Not a moat, a sewer, or an assassin, but a sealed room filled with gas. In the 19th and 20th centuries, poorly ventilated bathrooms sometimes accumulated methane and other flammable gases. Sewer systems could carry gas into buildings. Coal gas leaks could enter through walls and pipes. A single candle or match could ignite the mixture. Reports from Europe and North America describe bathroom explosions caused by gas escaping through drains or defective plumbing. In some cases, the blast shattered toilets, blew out windows, and killed people standing nearby. The danger was especially severe in buildings that used coal gas for lighting and had primitive sewer ventilation. A person could enter a bathroom carrying a match, light it, and trigger an explosion without realizing the room was contaminated. The bathroom was supposed to be the most private room in the building. That privacy also delayed discovery. A victim might be found only after smoke spread through the house. The modern toilet removed some medieval risks. It introduced industrial ones. Progress often changes the weapon. Some famous stories place a powerful person on a toilet, even when the evidence points somewhere else. Elvis Presley was found unconscious in a bathroom in 1977. Because of his location, the story became permanently linked to the toilet, although the official cause of death involved heart disease and drug use. The English King John is sometimes described as dying after overeating peaches and becoming violently ill while traveling. The actual sources disagree about his final symptoms, and none proves that he died on a toilet. The Roman Emperor Heliogabalus is also connected to a latrine death in later retellings, but ancient accounts say he was murdered and his body was thrown into a sewer. These stories are repeated because the bathroom creates instant irony. A palace, a crown, and a private room do not seem to belong in the same sentence. But history is full of deaths that became more memorable after storytellers moved them closer to the toilet. The location is sometimes a fact. Sometimes it is a literary weapon. Toilet deaths remain famous because they destroy the distance between power and biology. Kings could command armies. Popes could change laws. Generals could redraw borders. None of them could escape the body. The toilet is where social status disappears. A gold crown has no use there. A military title has no use there. The room reduces every person to the same physical requirements. That is why chroniclers remembered these deaths even when they recorded them with embarrassment or mockery. The story was not only about how someone died, it was about the collapse of an image. A ruler who seemed untouchable was suddenly alone. A nobleman protected by stone walls was trapped beneath them. A religious leader preparing for public restoration vanished into a private emergency. The toilet did not always kill them. Sometimes it simply revealed that they were mortal. And that may be the strangest part. History usually remembers where powerful people ruled, but sometimes it remembers where they fell. Arius died in a public latrine on the eve of his religious comeback. George II collapsed beside his private water closet. A medieval king may have been murdered through a toilet seat. Others disappeared into cesspits, sewers, and prison chambers. Some accounts are well documented. Others are disputed, corrupted, or embroidered by enemies. But every story carries the same message. Human beings build monuments to escape ordinary life. Then ordinary life waits behind a wooden door. The final throne is sometimes made of stone. Sometimes it is made of porcelain. Either way, nobody keeps it for long.